He became a United States Marine by accident. Became a Baltimore City police officer by accident. Transferred to another agency, and he's here to talk about investigating a drug kingpin and all that went along with it. Welcome to the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. In the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show, we are joined by special guests talking about their experiences, the realities of investigating crimes, plus those who have experienced horrendous trauma. Police, first responders, military, and victims of crime share their stories. Hi, I'm John J. Wiley. In addition to being a broadcaster, I'm also a retired police sergeant. Be sure to check out our website, letradio.com, and also like us on Facebook. Search for the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. There's a couple ways you can stay in touch and keep informed of what's going on with the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. Number one, go to our website, letradio.com. Sign up for our email newsletter. It's real easy to find. I promise we don't spam you. I send out about one email every 2 weeks or so. And there's also a feature called broadcast channels on our Facebook page where we send messages directly to your inbox, directly to your messenger. Real easy to sign up for. Make sure you like or follow the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show Facebook page. And up top, you'll see broadcast channels, one for free podcast versions of the radio show, another one top post of the day. So you too can stay informed quickly, easily, and best of all, like always, free. All right, joining us from Maryland, my home state. I call it my home state. That's where I retired from the Baltimore City Police Department in 1992. Yeah, I was a police back in the 1900s. Long time ago. That place always is going to be near and dear to my heart. We have Maurice Hicks joining us on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. First of all, Maurice, thank you for your service in the United States Marine Corps. Thank you for your service as a police officer. And thanks for telling your story on the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. All very much appreciated. Thank you very much, John. And he's by the way, the author of the book, Looking for Trouble. And his website is mauricehicks.com. That's MAURICE, Hicks.com. I got to say this before we get started, Maurice, and we're going to do our best not to walk down memory lane. He grew up in a lot of the areas where I policed at, and at a time that we overlapped quite a bit. But Maurice is a name that is not as popular as it used to be back in the 80s and 90s. Yes, you're correct. And I can't help but think of the Steve Miller song when I hear the name Maurice. I can't help but think of the Joker and enter Maurice. That's funny. It's a different time. Things have changed quite a bit. So you're retired from the Prince George's County Police Department. That's where you finished your career. Before we get into that and all that came along with it, I understand that you grew up in Baltimore, in the Northwest District of Baltimore, where I happen to spend most of my career policing. That is correct. And is it safe to say that that area has changed dramatically? It's not like it used to be? It's not like it used to be, but it's still pretty bad from what I understand. Yes. Man, Sector 1 in Northwest District it was full on. Every shift we worked, we had at least one shooting, a stabbing, murders, rapes, you name it. We didn't have time for things like traffic stops. It was just nonstop. And the vast majority of what we did was quality of life issues. It wasn't about arresting people. It wasn't even about investigating crime. It was about parking disputes. It was about neighborhood complaints. It was family disturbances. You name it. It never ended. Yes, and I lived it as a child, lived in an urban environment, so I had, saw it from a different perspective as a person who lived there. It was a different thing, and I got to say this. People love to talk about police. Baltimore in the 1980s, the Northwest District of Baltimore in the 1980s, there were some phenomenal people. And the vast majority of people that you even wound up arresting, the vast majority of them were not bad people. They just did something. They had a few bad minutes or they made a bad decision. But the vast majority of people we encountered every day were great people. We never, ever had interactions with them other than trying to solve a quality of life issue. Yes, and that's exactly what my sergeant said. He said most of the people in these neighborhoods are good people, just caught up in a bad situation. He's right on point. Yeah. And before we belabor the point is I remember being a young officer in Baltimore in the Northwest District, and I was talking to someone on my post. It was Elmer and Belvedere 635 post, and this woman said at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, my kids got to come inside because they can't play out front because of all the gunfire. And when people do start shooting, we have to get in the bathtub. And I never forget that, Maurice, that was not an issue where I grew up, but that was an issue where they grew up and they had to deal with it every day.
Yes, I never remember getting into the tub, but definitely we could never stay out beyond nightfall. We couldn't stay out there like most people enjoy the summer breeze because we had to come up because we had to worry about being shot.
Yeah, and it was crazy.
It really frustrated as a young child. Yeah, you couldn't even enjoy any kind of quality of life.
And the sad part is, and I don't want to be beating on Baltimore for people listening in California. There are families that have multiple sons murdered. There are families that have multiple sons murdered and other ones in prison, that men and women. And it's we could talk as long as the day is about the causes and effects. But no matter how much money seems to be dumped into areas like Northwest Baltimore or Sandstown, Winchester, and Central District, Western District, nothing seems to change for those people. And it's got to end.
The horrible thing is that as I travel across the country, even the Caribbean, other places out of the U.S., when people find out from Baltimore, almost all of them say either had a relative killed in Baltimore, D.C., and that's really sad.
Yeah.
And I actually had a brother murdered in Baltimore at age 17 and another brother shot 8 times in Baltimore. So, it's terrible.
It's terrible. And people really, man, I've had several guests on from Washington, D.C., prosecutors, retired police. We're going to need a story because you wound up finishing your career in Prince George's County Police Department, which is a suburb of D.C., and it's got its own problems, its own issues. But when they find out that I police in Baltimore, they'll say, man, was it like The Wire? Was it as violent as we think it is? We hear it is? And I'm like, well, no, it really wasn't quite like The Wire, but yes, it was that violent. And it's been that violent since the Civil War.
Yes, and I had several officers in Prince George's County. They're afraid to come to Baltimore, and they carry a gun. So that's pretty bad. Bad.
Well, we also had some retired or former Baltimore police that left and went to Prince George's County. They got killed. They were shot and killed. I know one that went to my hometown where I grew up in Norfolk, Virginia. That was a Baltimore police, and he was shot and killed in the line of duty down there, which I'm wearing a shirt right now that has on the back of it all the officers killed in the line of duty in Baltimore up until I think about 15 years ago. And the amount of violence there is in that city, it's amazing that more are not killed. The problem that a lot of people don't realize, my wife does, a lot of other people do, is there's so many that are viciously mauled for the rest of their lives and maimed, and they have to find a way to build their life afterwards, and that's just not right.
Yes, I tell you, walk around Baltimore now. I live back in Baltimore now after living in Nevada for 14 years. And you see so many people walk around limp. It's like the walking wounded around here in Baltimore. So many people have been shot. And I think the reason why a lot of officers have survived the shooting because of shock trauma.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Shock trauma plays a big part in saving a lot of lives for people shot here in Baltimore.
Well, they've certainly made advances. We're talking with Maurice Hicks. I'm going to give you the bird's eye view. And when we return, we'll start talking about his story. He was a U.S. Marine by accident. He was a member of the Baltimore City Police Department by accident. He transferred to Prince George's County, Maryland Police Department. He's author of the book, Looking for Trouble. And his website is mauricehicks.com. When we return, we're going to talk more about his experience. Don't go anywhere in this Law Enforcement Talk Radio show. We'll be right back. Here's your chance to get into the ground floor, to make a donation to make the movie Gun Runner, based off of the true story of now retired police detective Mario Oliveira, who shot 6 times while investigating a crime, died 3 times, brought back to life, was in a hospital for a month, rushed back to work, only to suffer a near-fatal heart attack, and then several months later, a near-fatal stroke. It talks about his recovery, his life after, and more. That's at gunrunnerfilm.com. Again, you can make a donation at gunrunnerfilm.com. We're return conversation with Maurice Hicks, retired from the Prince George's County Police Department. His website is mauricehicks.com, and he's author of the book Looking for Trouble. And he grew up in Baltimore, lives in Baltimore, and he happened to grow up in an area where I policed. And I promise you, we're not going to walk down memory lane together, but we could. We did that earlier. We talked about Mondawmin Mall. We talked about the Roost. We talked about Leon's Pig Pen, all those places that were still near and dear to my heart. So let's go into your story, Maurice. You grew up in Baltimore, and I understand you enlisted in the United States Marine Corps, but that was not high on your list of things to do, was it?
Oh, absolutely not. I had no interest in law enforcement or the military whatsoever. A high school friend of mine asked me to go with him down to the recruiting station, and I went with him just to keep him company. And while I was there, the recruiter said, "Son, well, I'm glad that you're interested in joining the Marine Corps." I said, "Sir, I'm not interested in joining the Marine Corps." He said, "Well, son, while you're here, I want you to take this test." So I took the test, and I joined the Marine Corps, and my partner didn't.
Funny.
Yeah. So 4 years later, I had a friend of mine in high school who wanted to my cousin wanted to join the Baltimore Police Department. He asked me to walk with him down there. Walked down with him. The recruiter said the same thing. "I'm glad you want to become a police officer." I said, "Well, I'm not interested." He said, "Son, while you're here, I want you to take this test." Same thing happened. I joined. My cousin didn't.
And what year was that?
Same thing happened to me in Prince George's. That was in 1983.
Okay.
2 years later, my partner in Baltimore was interested in joining the Prince George's County Police Department, and the exact same thing happened. I went down to keep him company. I joined, he didn't. So
I'm laughing because there was probably right around the same time. I went to Prince George's County Police Department because they were taking a lot of laterals, and it didn't mean you need to go to the academy. You had to learn their policies, procedures, and stuff, but the law was the same. And one of the things they do is the physical fitness test. They did all this stuff. I passed with flying colors. And then I was like, I'm not sure I want to go. I went down with another Baltimore police, and neither one of us went. But you did.
Yes, it was an offer I couldn't refuse. Take home car, $5,000 more, pay to start, and a free apartment. So who could say no?
I know. And we used to jokingly say back in Baltimore, like the Maryland State Police, they had all kinds of nicknames for us. We had nicknames for them as well. But we'd say them in the counties, they get take-home cars. They get everything. They get socks provided by the department and everything else. We're out here doing our best to make do with next to nothing. And don't even get me started on the cars because we had old beaters. When I first started, we didn't even have sirens. We had one siren per sector. The rest of the cars, you had a blue light, a bubble light, and you had your high beams, and you stuck your head out the window and you yelled, "Get out of the way." That's the way things were. When you went to with your cousin about being a Baltimore City Police, and they're like, "Hey, while you're here, why don't you find out more?" What possessed you to do that? What possessed you to say yeah and go through the academy and everything went along with it?
When he kind of explained to me that I could work out, get paid to work out, and go to school and get college and 16 college credits, I'm like, hey, this is all down my alley. I work out anyway, and I go to school, so it was like perfect.
Where did you get to work out? Where did you get to work out and get paid for it?
Yeah, going through the academy.
Oh, the academy.
Yes. I'm like, this is great. I'm a kid running in Baltimore. I get to work out for free, like in the military. This is great, and get paid for it, and go to college. So, but the first day I was in the academy, I knew it was a job for me. I knew I would do 20 years the first day because it was a job where, I could use my mind, and figure out things, you can engage with, solving crimes, especially after growing up, living under siege. So I just knew that day one I would do 20 years.
It's amazing that the academy was very formative for me, and there's still some things that I do that were drilled into me day one. Number one is no matter how bad the fight, no matter how bad you're losing, you never quit. You never give up. You never throw in the towel. If you go in the ring with Mike Tyson and he's destroying you, you just don't quit. Number two was you're a strong hand. I'm right-handed. You learn, you never put something in a hand because you always have to have it free for your gun in case you need it. Those are two things that stick with me, and that was in 1980. This is many, many, many years later. Did you find that things you learned back then stay with you?
Definitely. The same thing that you mentioned about having, not having your hands in your pocket. And I can remember seeing an officer being attacked in New York City with a guy with a knife. And there was several officers standing there, but he was the only person who had his hands in his pocket. He was the one who got attacked. And I remember also when you're in traffic, you're about to turn, don't turn your wheels. Keep your wheels straight in case somebody hits you. You won't go into traffic.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of things that I remember that my field training officer taught me, that little 5 days in the academy.
Yeah. Another thing was, when you talk about traffic is, and I still do today, if you were the first car to red light and it turns green, wait a second. Don't be the first one to go, because quite often there's a red light runner, you're going to get hit. It's amazing. Don't even get me started on field training. And when I first came out of academy, because one of the things that happened all the time with the experienced officers and the FTOs is all of a sudden they would yell at me, "Where are you?" And I'm like, "Oh, where are you?" Run out to the nearest street sign and find out where you're at, because if I need help, you can't tell anybody where I'm at.
Yes, those veterans gave you such critical information. They helped me a lot when I went to Prince George's County and became a field training officer myself. One of the other things I remember, my field training officer got on me for not wearing my hat indoors, at a Calder Ground bus station. I'm like, we're not required to wear it. He said, now, if something would have went down,
we can't
they
tell
looked
who you
around the
are.
room, you could spot you immediately with the hat.
Right.
So
right.
a lot of those things I was able to pass on to a lot of recruits that I trained.
So,
Prince George's.
How long did you do in Baltimore before you went to Prince George's County?
2 years.
2 years. And where were you assigned?
Southeast District.
Okay.
Field training Central District and field training, field training in Central and did 2 years in the Southeast.
And then you went to Prince George's County, and we would like to think, and I jokingly say this all the time, they had it made. Well, there's a lot of PG County that is really, really rough, and a lot of violent crime in PG County. And you got exposed to it in your career involving a drug king, who later turned out to be a drug kingpin. How did you get involved with this individual first?
Yeah, my first contact with him, I was a rookie. I was about to get cut loose from field training. I had about another week or two. And I see all these calls converging on this guy. And my trainer often telling me, this is a wannabe, kingpin, and watch yourself down here, because, you could find yourself staring down the barrel of his gun.
Right.
So that's how my initial contact with him. And then he was suspected of a bunch of shootings. So I would stop and talk to young men on the street that I knew worked for him. And one guy told me, he says, "Officer Hicks, I could have you killed." I'm like, whoa, hold up. Son, look, I know who you work for, and he's not going to send you a bill when you come up short. He's going to kill you.
We're going to take a short break on the note. Return that conversation moment. We're talking with Maurice Hicks, retired from Prince George's County Police Department, United States Marine, author of the book, Looking for Trouble. His website is mauricehicks.com. This is the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back. I'm going to let you in a little secret that's been a game changer for me with social media. You can get details at letpops.com. It's a redirect, letpops.com. It's called Chatbots. They're Meta partners, Facebook, Instagram, Telegram, WhatsApp, and soon to be TikTok. You can turn those people that visit and engage with your content on social media into consumers and then sometimes customers, and you can market to them. Get details. Best of all, you can get started for free. letpops.com. That's letpops.com. Again, it's letpops.com.
Imagine contacting millions of people every month using Facebook from the comfort of your home or business. How much would you increase the success of your business or service if you could do that? I do that every day, and so can you. Plus, earn a separate revenue from Meta. Learn how to work smarter and not harder on Facebook. Get step-by-step instructions on what to do and what not to do. Start with a free membership. Get details at letbreak.com. letbreak.com. That's letbreak.com.
We're turning our conversation with Maurice Hicks, retired from the Prince George's County, Maryland Police Department. He is also a United States Marine, also worked in Baltimore City Police Department. He's author of the book, Looking for Trouble. His website is mauricehicks.com. before we went to break, Maurice, we're talking about this guy that you talked to. He said, I could have you killed. And I was just pondering this the other day. Because someone asked me on social media, just look for the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show Facebook page. They're asking me, how much violence do you encounter? I was in 4 shootings in 10 years. I've had multiple death threats. In the first 2 shootings, I never fired back. I've been treated for smoke inhalation twice in Northwest District of Baltimore from burning houses. And more car accidents you can remember, and more brawls that you can shake a stick at. So, there were death threats. And we always... I can't speak for you, but I always took them with a grain of salt because they happen so often. But this one got your attention, didn't it?
Yes, it did. And I told the kid, I said, you can have yourself killed. You need to get out of this business. So a few days later, I see this aspiring kingpin. He's standing at the top of the hill, and he's looking down like a mighty lion over his empire. And I walk up to him, and I said, let my people go. I said, you're a maggot for death and destruction. And he started laughing. He said, what did you say? I said, let my people go. So he says, I don't understand that blank. Only thing I understand is money.
Yeah.
So I got back in my car, and at that point I said, somehow or another I'm going to try to get this guy. So that would lead me from going from street patrol to major narcotics to homicide, and then to the FBI pursuing this kingpin and his organization, who they believe were responsible for at least 12 murders and several shootings.
Here's the thing about it is there's no joke with the last of the 4 shootings I was in. 2 of them directly involved drugs, and one of them was only marijuana. And that it's the violence that comes along with that. And I know I'm preaching to the choir, but I was around kids that I met when they were 10 years old, when the time was slow, and we'd have a conversation, which wasn't every day, but Sunday mornings were particularly slow in the springtime. And then was the last face they saw when they're shot by their dealer because they shorted them one too many times on their product when they fronted them. I was the last face they saw, 15, 16 years of age, and it was never ending.
I know what you mean. I had a classmate, 11 years old and 13 years old, killed over drugs. I'll never forget it.
And people don't understand is, look, and I remember, and we'll get back to your conversation in a moment. I remember talking to drug dealers like, man, if you applied your energy to legitimate business, you'd be a multimillionaire because you're out here every day dodging me. You're out here every day, no matter what the weather, dodging other dealers. You're out here dodging junkies who are trying to rip you off, and you're just dodging every element in the world, and you're doing it to make money. And so many of those guys died, and they died violent deaths. Yeah,
you're absolutely right. And, and a lot of things I think people don't understand is the tightrope you walk as a detective or as a patrol officer when you're trying to convince these young men to, walk away from drugs. And then, like you say, I have to then when like this kid ended up being killed, then I have to see their baby face, riddled with bullets, and it's emotionally draining because you're trying to convince them, with every fiber of your being, trying to explain to them that you've seen this and this is the end result, and it's that role strain and then role strain of leaving your home with people out burglarizing people in your neighborhood, serial rapists running around, people doing the home invasion, and you have to leave your home
right
unprotected to go protect other people.
And we could talk. There's so many ironies. I remember being, I think it was 1984, maybe 83, and there was a tremendous blizzard in early March, and we canceled a ski trip that we're going to rent a bus and go to Pennsylvania because it snowed so bad. And I get the phone call, you got to show up at work. And I'm like 7 miles away. I can't get there. And they said, walk. And I'm walking down Northern Parkway in a blizzard in my police uniform and someone picked me up, gave me a ride so I could sit and do what they called fixed positions, where you'd sit there at a parking lot in a grocery store or shopping center and sit and get looted. That's all you did for 8 hours.
Yeah, a lot of people really don't think about that. Think about and that was my goal in writing the book, to give people a sense of what we actually go through, the sacrifice that we make in doing police work, sacrifices to our family, to our physical and emotional health.
We could talk about that forever and ever. The other thing that doesn't get much publicity, Maurice, and I know you weren't in Baltimore City that long, but you did a long time in policing, is that everybody we arrest, we're very fortunate when they come back and they go, man, I got sober because of you. I got clean because of you. I changed my life because of you. And those stories don't get told. When police rescue people from burning buildings, they don't get told. What we hear about is the bad stuff because that's what gets everybody's attention.
You're absolutely right. I remember saving lives. Someone was hit, sitting on the side of the road. Nobody knew it. I ran up on them. I remember a person freezing to death outside. You're right. And I have some of those stories in my book. A lot of people don't think about, and I wish, like I say, I know the news media likes sensational stories, but I agree, that's what's missing. And people have more respect for the police. They knew the impact we make and what we actually go through.
Well, could you imagine, I know you know the answer to this, could you imagine what life would be like in American cities if we didn't have police departments?
Absolutely. I mean, we're the most accessible form of government. When you need something 24/7, who's available? The police.
Right.
And people, I think a lot of people take that for granted.
They also were the ones
no matter
most
what the problem is.
Approachable, and you got complaints with some other agency, you'd approach us and yell at us, mistreat us. We had nothing to do with it. Or how about this one? The police in Philadelphia or Los Angeles did something crazy that was not good, and all of a sudden you're getting you-know-what about it. And this is Baltimore. This is the other side of the country.
Yes. Like they told us in the academy, they acted in one person affects the perception of the entire agency, or in this case, the whole profession.
Let's get back to your career a little bit. You got involved in working narcotics. Was it because of this guy, or was it because of everything was going on and you just happened to go after him during your career?
Well, the interesting thing, John, is that I lived across the street from a shooting gallery, and I used to watch people shoot up heroin almost every day.
Remember those days? My God. The boxing glove hands, we used to call them?
Yes. And that had a significant impact, on my life. And something actually happened when I was 11 years old. They were shooting up heroin like they normally do, and then they burglarized my neighbor's home, who was my mentor. And they were bringing this stuff back to back to their garage that they had stolen from a home. And one kid showed me a gun. He was about 15, and I was 11. And he motioned me not to say anything. And later my mentor came home, and she asked me, had I seen anything? And I hesitated for a second, and I told her no. I told her no because I was afraid, number one. And number two, because it was ingrained in us not to say anything to the police.
Right.
And that troubled me for years. And so a lot of things I did in police work, I felt like was a redemption. I knew it was my calling, that, God had called me to make a difference. And my grandfather told me, he said, you have a good heart and a good mind, you can make a difference in this world. Had no idea that it would be in police work. So that was what kind of prompted me.
We rarely ever think that's going to be the case. We're talking about Maurice Hicks. He is retired from the Prince George's County Police Department, spent time in the Baltimore City Police Department. He's a United States Marine Corps veteran. He wrote the book, Looking for Trouble, and his website is mauricehicks.com. We're going to take a short break. We'll be right back. Remember when news was free? Be sure to check out the Newsbreak app. It's free. And be sure to follow the Law Enforcement Talk radio show and podcast on the Newsbreak app. Newsbreak is your #1 local news app for current events, free live news for you and your community. Download the Newsbreak app today for free, and be sure to follow the Law Enforcement Talk radio show and podcast on the Newsbreak app. That's the free Newsbreak app. Be sure to look for and follow the Law Enforcement Talk radio show and podcast.
Imagine earning an extra $500 to $5,000 a month or more from the comfort of your home or business, all with Facebook. That's right. Meta is paying people just like you every month. Learn how to create another revenue stream from Meta and dramatically increase your reach, all without breaking your own time bank. Sign up for a free membership at letbreak.com. letbreak.com. That's letbreak.com.
Return conversation with Maurice Hicks on the Law Enforcement Talk radio show. He grew up in Baltimore. he accidentally became a United States Marine. He went to the recruiter with a buddy, and he joined the Marines. His buddy did not. Then he went to Baltimore City Police Department recruiters with a cousin. He became a Baltimore City Police. His cousin did not. Then he went to Prince George's County Police Department with a buddy of Baltimore City Police about lateraling. He went to Prince George's County Police Department. His buddy did not. And he's author of the book, Looking for Trouble. His website is mauricehicks.com. Maurice, I love the conversation. One of the things that we could go on and on and on about is the misconceptions of police. And I'm a little bit older than you, not a whole lot, but what really shaped me was this guy named Joseph Wambaugh, who wrote all these books about policing in the 70s and 80s and late 60s. And one of the things, and I'm paraphrasing, he always said was the biggest danger for policing is psychological damage. And that's proven to be true for many, many people. And I was saying, if you're policing anywhere in the United States for long enough, you're going to get dinged up. You're going to get dinged up mentally, and more than likely, you're going to get dinged up physically. It's a young person's game. And a lot of that dinging up mentally comes from all the trauma you're exposed to. So was there something in your career that you still think about, even though you don't want to?
Yes, there's one incident where a lady was on PCP, and she took off all her clothes, and she killed herself. And my partner watched the whole thing. I saw the aftermath, which was, I won't get into how horrific it was. But after that, we cleared that call. And I saw my partner on another call, and I asked him how he was doing. He said, "How am I doing?" He said, "I just seen the most horrific thing that any human being could ever see in their life."
Right.
He never gave me a 15-second break.
Right.
He just sent us to the next call. So of course I'm not all right.
No.
And I'll never forget that. I'll never forget the images of that 23-year-old lady. To this day, it's something that, it's the worst thing I've ever seen in my life. And I've seen some bad things on the street, but that was probably the most horrific thing that anybody could ever see.
And one of the things that we used to have a saying, and you being from Baltimore, you understand this, there's a distinct dialogue, language, accent that people have. And one of the things that we would say all the time was, you're Baltimore police. You got a job to do. Suck it up, buttercup. You can lick your wounds later on. Because there were a lot of them.
Yes, and we're not robots. And the bad thing is, when he said it to me, I was thinking to myself, I thought we were robots, and I felt bad because I kind of cursory asked him, how he was doing, but I really should have been, sitting him down and, trying to see, how bad it affected him. But because we were trained like that, I felt ashamed that I didn't even know to dig deeper.
When you bring up training, no one really trained us. And by the way, I policed before, and you probably did too. Before we had peer support groups, before we had all this focus on PTSD and trauma and all that other stuff. And I think it's great that we're, as an industry, really addressing those things. However, the really big incidents, I don't believe are the culprits. It's the day-to-day thing. And when people die by suicide, whatever kind of violence, people living in really traumatic, downtrodden, desperate situations, all that stuff, you can't help but walk away from that affected.
Yes, it's there's nightmares. I mean, even from working undercover, not knowing whether they're going to be stabbed, any minute. I remember I had a guy that had a Crocodile D type of knife. Yeah. It was talking about cutting up some other officers, while I was working undercover, that was, in a car next to us. And I had nightmares for that for years, nightmares of him standing over me with the knife and my gun, me pulling the trigger on my gun and my gun not going off. I mean, I experienced that for years.
I'm right there with you. My wife, who, by the way, I met years after retiring from police work, and this destroyed my first marriage. And a lot of it, I can only say, is because of my inability to handle things differently. She had a part to play in it, but we're focused on my part. And when I do things today, look, I'm a 66-year-old man. And you look at me and I think she says this all the time. and this comes from me, I'm not the one. I'm too old to run. I'm not going to run away from you, but I will fight you. And I just don't seem to have an off switch like I used to have before policing. Have you found that you don't have an off switch anymore?
I would agree with that. Yeah, you've been through so much. You just don't have to fight anymore. You work for a more peaceful life and more peaceful. Yeah, peaceful solutions to problems. Without a doubt.
Look, dude, I pray and I meditate several times a day just to keep things quiet. I have no patience for he said, she said arguments or drama. I want to transition a little bit. So you retired at what year?
I retired in July of 2003.
And you decided to write this book, Looking for Trouble. When did you decide to write it? Were you still in the job, or was it after?
Well, I actually started writing a little bit before I left the job. But then a cousin convinced me that nobody would be interested. Everybody knows what goes on in these neighborhoods. So I put it on hold for a long time. But I was teaching a class at University of Maryland Global Campus, criminal investigation class. I taught it several times, and my students would tell me I would use my actual cases as case studies. But I wouldn't reveal to them until the end that it was actual cases of mine. And they were all telling me the same thing. This will make a great book. And that's what convinced me to write the book.
By the way, I don't think everybody does know what happens in those neighborhoods. And let's, without going into politics, which I avoid like the plague, people don't really comprehend what goes on in these neighborhoods because people don't tell them what goes on in these neighborhoods. The news media doesn't tell them.
Yes, and so many people have told me that this book is so enlightening. They had no idea what we went through. I've had a lot of officers' wives who told me, I was married to a police officer for 15 years and never knew this. So this, a lot of people are very enlightened, having no idea of, because I talk a lot about what I'm experiencing, not just the cases, the people, but what I'm experiencing emotionally as I'm going through this.
The other thing, too, is I got to take some of the blame for this because I never wanted to tell my wife at the time how bad things were. The answer to every question was fine. How was your day? It was fine. And then I'm doing what I did. I tried to transition from Cop J into Dad J. But there became a point where I was much better on the job because I knew what to do. I knew my role was. There could be all kinds of terror and trauma going on. I'd be calm, cool, and collected. But, man, when I got home and I was forced to retire and things got quiet, that's when the real trouble for me started.
Yes, because, you can't. You can't keep fighting a battle everywhere. You fight it on the street. You fight it in court.
Oh, yeah.
You fight the internal politics. Something's got to give. You just can't. You can't be in attack mode and fight mode all the time. You got to find peace and tranquility somewhere. And normally, it's in the home. You have to eventually just have to give up. You find yourself giving up.
And your website is MauriceHicks.com, which I had to check out a little bit before going on the radio with you. Mm-hmm. And are you a private detective now?
Yes, I am. I was a private investigator in Las Vegas for 14 years, and I'm currently a private investigator in Maryland.
And people have talking about another occupation that's totally misunderstood, thanks to television shows like The Rocker Files and all that stuff. I'm sure it's not as entertaining as people would be led to believe, but you haven't really walked away from police work totally, have you?
No, I haven't. In fact, I'm experiencing some of the same things, being a private investigator and having a security company, doing security as I did in police work. I'm still running into some of the criminal element, some of the con artists, and
it never ends.
And everything else. It's really interesting. My third book is going to be Maurice for Hire, Vegas PI.
There you go. And you get all that information about your books at MauriceHicks.com. Can people reach out to you and contact you there as well?
Absolutely.
Maurice, thanks for your service, United States Marine. Thanks for your service in Baltimore City Police Department, Prince George's County Police Department, and thanks for being guests on the show. All very much appreciated.
Thank you for having me, John. Greatly appreciated.
This was the podcast version of the nationally syndicated Law Enforcement Talk radio show, and we are so glad that you decided to join us. Big thanks to our guests for telling their story on the show. 2 simple things you can do. Be sure to check out our website, letradio.com. That's letradio.com. And be sure to follow us or like us on Facebook. Do a search on Facebook for Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show. And be sure when you see a post that we put up that you like, that you resonate with, that gets your attention, be sure to share it with your friends. Back in just a few days, another episode of the Law Enforcement Talk Radio Show and Podcast. Until then, this is John J. Wiley. See ya.